listening to the PR Wind Down podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down. Okay, so we are introducing a new segment on the PR Wind Down podcast this week. It's called Questions Clients Always Ask. So we're introducing this segment partly to help the people that are practitioners know how to respond when clients ask these questions, but also if potential clients are listening, to give them a chance to hear, some answers to some of the basic questions that they might have, given that they're frequently asked. So this week, our client question is, should we pay to put out this press release on the wire? And that is a very, very, very popular question. I think a lot of times clients conflate putting a press release out on the wire with it being the same as that they're going to get media coverage for doing that. And I often explain that's not really the case. You actually need to do custom media outreach in addition to putting it out on the wire. Now, putting it out on the wire itself, back in the day, that might have actually led to some stories, but nowadays that's not the case. So a lot of times prospects will come to me and say, we put this release on the wire and nothing happened, so now we need help. And that's also not ideal if you're a client listening, because what happens is you've already kind of spilled the beans, right?
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
It's a lot harder.
There's so many layers to this, because mostly I think what you're talking about right now are smaller startup type companies.
Yes.
Because if you're some big monolith, you actually might get media coverage by putting a press release on the wire. Or if you're a publicly traded company and you're talking about almost anything, you have to put your press release out on the wire.
True. Yep.
So let's sort of put that on the shelf and sort of focus on the smaller startup, newer, not like household name type companies. Because I think that's really what you started to talk about.
That's a good point.
Mostly.
Yes. No, that's a very good point. And then the other thing they'll ask me is, okay, well, if you guys are doing the media outreach and that's the most important piece, then why should we pay to put it on the wire? And then the answer is because it helps with your SEO. Mm-hmm. Also, it provides an elegant hyperlink that we can use on our pitches instead of a clunky cut and paste of a press release that we put at the bottom of the email copy.
You can also have it on your press rooms part of your website as a company.
That's right. And you can put it on social media and. So it's a valuable asset for that reason. And it especially makes sure that if people are searching for the company on Google News in the future, they not only can they find the stories that we generated as a result of the release, but they can find the original release for the source material because they want to reference it, or in case, frankly, they want to contact the team that put it out.
Right.
So it's also a way of leaving your footprints in the sand so that they can find your PR team and come to them if something is a good fit for them in the future.
Right.
So I always advise it's a good thing to do if it's something where you want the footprint left in the sand and the digital, landscape for the future. Right. If it's something really small and it's, for example, a new hire release, and the new hire is maybe going to get you a brief and a trade publication, maybe you don't.
Or you want to send it to the local media or to that person's, college alumni, college newspaper. Right. Then you might not have to.
Right. And you can still put it on your website if we've drafted it. Now, the other thing they sometimes ask that's similar is, okay, well, why do we need a press release at all instead of just a pitch? And that one is a little bit trickier. Normally, you do a press release if it's a complex topic and it's got multiple moving pieces, or if it's got a quote from a third party that you want to use as a term of endorsement. That's another reason to do that instead of just in a pitch. I think it's also smart to do it just so that you have that client-sanctioned language about something, especially if it's new. So if it's not something that's already been written about a lot and it's not on their website copy, it's also a way of just making sure you're aligned on how you're talking about it. So that's another reason to do it. And it's also just good arsenal for if you have a press kit and you want to have all the old press releases in there, it's a way of having things documented in an official capacity so that it's easier to share that information in the future?
So basically the press release process has changed since I started because of the internet and the way it's delivered and the value of it and the meaning of it. I mean, it really has changed quite a bit, how you go about it. But then the strategy behind the press release is the other kind of piece of it. Because if you're going to put out a press release next Thursday, usually you want your PR people to talk to reporters in advance of that Thursday to try and either pitch an exclusive if it's some big amazing thing, or under embargo to like a handful of target reporters, so that the reporters can interview your people, read the story, get to know your company, and if they agree to your embargo, write the story so that it comes out either like a little before or the same time that your press release comes out, because you don't want, which is what you were talking about earlier, your press release to, headhunt news. Because if the press release is already out, reporters are less likely to write about it or want to talk to you about it. You might get like a one-liner or a blip here or there in some very esoteric trade publication. Mm-hmm. But like a real news story, you basically scooped yourself by that point, which is what April was talking about earlier about don't put out a press release and then say, oh no, we didn't get any coverage to help us, because that's kind of dead. You can go up with a different angle or a different news, but like that release is pretty much over at that point.
Mm-hmm. And to add to what you're saying, I think reporters still look at press releases as, oh, the company thinks this is a really big deal. So a pitch in and of itself without a press release, I think they think, okay, maybe this is a good story. Mm-hmm. But if you send them a press release and it's under embargo and you say, we're going to give you a first look and we're not putting this out until this date, are you interested in reviewing it? They take it more seriously, so they give it a little bit more of an ear. So that's why you don't want to do it all the time.
Right.
But for your really big announcements, if it's a new feature, a new milestone, a
big partnership or investment. Yeah. So here's one other thing that I am kind of in the middle of doing. If a company has, or your client, whatever the client is, has some big news coming out, but there's sort of a couple of pieces leading up to the big news, you can, and I'll see how effective it is in the case that I have suggested it, pitch, not press release, but pitch one of the smaller sort of building blocks to a smaller universe of reporters to try and gauge their interest in that, and hoping that maybe, like again, exclusively or under embargo, some embargo date you make up, will be interested to write about it or talk to your executive about it as a way to start getting interest about your company or product or service or client in advance of the big news. So sort of like, here's what we're doing now. It's pretty interesting on its own. It is going to be a part of something bigger coming. Do you want to talk about it or write about it now? And then in a month, you're also going to hear about like the bigger news. So the small news pitch, then the bigger news would be a release.
Agreed. Yep. So Laura, our guest is arriving.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So I'm going to let Kelcey in if we're ready. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Our guest today is Kelcey Alonzo, and he was a graphic designer, graphic artist back in the day, who has always been into guitars and playing guitars, building guitars, just the beauty of guitars. And one day he was like, it was like the chocolate and peanut butter had to go together. He's like, how can I be like a graphic person and a guitar person and bring those two things together? And from that was born Guitar Connoisseur magazine. And he's recently relaunched the magazine, and he's the editor-in-chief of the magazine. And we haven't had an editor-in-chief on our show yet, April. So
we have not. This is impressive.
I have scored a big play here. So
are you sure you're talking about me? Hold on. Wait, is that me?
I think so.
Wow. I should hire you.
All right. Well, yes. That's why we try to trick people into actually hiring us after this podcast.
Wow, you make me sound awesome. I love it.
I'm going to ask you two questions right off the bat. Where are you located, and did you indeed just recently relaunch the magazine, or did I make that up?
You did not make that up. I am in New York City. People that are not in New York, they're like, okay, he's in Queens, you know, but to the rest of the world, Queens is New York City.
Damn straight.
Queens.
Yeah. I was in Long Island City for a long time. It was the best.
Oh, okay.
I was partial to Queens.
So
anyway, so yes, I did relaunch the magazine recently. I took an 18-month hiatus because I needed it for my mental health. It's really hard to be inspired to do something like Guitar Connoisseur. It's hard to be creative when your head's not on straight.
you thought relaunching a magazine in the middle of a worldwide pandemic was probably a good...
Well, there's nothing else to do, you know? I don't know. I just said, okay, you know, you've got this platform that you spent all these years tirelessly working on and trying to make it happen. And it really was just a break, you know? And then I said, okay, well, I think now's the time to relaunch.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so last summer I started planning it, and I said, okay, you know, do I still have my juju, you know, like my good juju around me to like actually talk to people. Luckily, I did it from 2012, and the last issue I did was May 2019.
So wait, show us the issue that you had. What month is that?
That's 2016. 2016.
Show it again. I just want to.
Yeah. Oh, and it's signed by him. I don't know if you guys can see.
So do you know who that is, April? You won't.
No,
I mean,
April, you better know who this is. I'll give you a hint.
It's Billy Gibbons and ZZ Top.
Ah, of course.
It's a good get for a guitar.
I am signing off. See you later.
You know what? I did like ZZ Top when I was in junior high. I just don't think I ever knew what
who they were.
Well,
right.
no. Well, so here's a funny story. So my parents are very evangelical Christian, and I wasn't allowed to listen to that kind of music. But I had a secret CD of ZZ Top that I would play. But I wasn't able to watch MTV, and there was no way at the time there wouldn't have been like the internet, the World Wide Web, right? So I wouldn't have had any way of knowing because I was sneaking in the CD to listen to it.
Yeah.
So
that's hilarious.
So I actually know
the music. You just don't know what he looks like.
What's great about Billy Gibbons is, you know, he's been Billy Gibbons his whole life. Number one, and what I mean by that is, they were around. Go all the way back to the 70s. You know, he's got his beard, he's got his hat, he's got his glasses. Fast forward to 80s, you got hair bands all over the place. He's still rocking the hat and the beard. 90s, you got grunge happening. He's still doing it. 2000, he's always, forget about, you know, style. The guy invented his own style.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he's got the accolades to go with it. You know, rock and roll, music. He loves art. He loves photography.
He was on Pawn Stars. You saw that one? Somebody sold them like the suit, and he came in. And he was like, "That is my suit."
I did.
So how do you deal with PR people, and how do you? This is sort of similar, but two different questions. Because in some cases you deal direct with the artist, and in other cases you deal direct with their PR people.
Yes.
So how does that work usually?
So it usually starts with either I receive a press release, which is cool and well written. And by the way, side note, I was going through my emails this morning, and I found emails from you all the way back from 2015. I was like, okay, now I see why she wants me to be on this show. Anyway.
So you deal with PR people and you get press releases?
So it usually starts with a press release, and I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So I'll contact them and say, hey, I want to do a story, do an interview with the artist, or talk about this product that sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. Great. Or I will say, I think it would be really cool to have this person on my cover, or that artist on my cover, or interview these people.
So you'll find their manager, PR person, whatever?
Right. So I will find them. Usually what I'll look up is, you know, who their PR person is. That's the first step. I never reach out to an artist directly. But I have reached artists direct, and they're like, okay, great. So every artist that I've contacted since I launched my January issue, it's all been direct. So that's helping a bit. I mean, no disrespect to PR
So you
people.
haven't had PR people in between on artists' things?
I have. Billy Gibbons was all through his PR.
Okay.
All of that was done through his PR.
And then they set up an interview and you interviewed him. How long did you interview him for? Do you remember?
Well, I didn't interview him. One of my writers interviewed him.
Oh, okay.
So
you hire freelance writers too?
Yes.
Okay.
So the thing is, I never wanted Guitar Connoisseur to be the Kelcey show. You know, I do the interviewing, I do the designing, you know, all the writing. Part of the thing that makes it so diverse is the people that do write for the magazine, which I don't hire traditional journalists. I will work with guitar builders who are good at writing.
Okay.
Because they're
really passionate difficult. About it?
Yes, they are passionate about it. But in Guitar Connoisseur, there's a lot of dialogue about guitar building. And if you don't know how to build a guitar or understand it, the conversation never gets in depth. If the name is Guitar Connoisseur, we really want to go with that flavor of high-end, very exclusive, and very detailed, you know, very technical. The conversations can get technical.
Right.
And I think it's important for whoever's interviewing them to understand what's really going on, you know, the way the neck is built, or a certain neck profile, or a body shape.
Right. So I got two questions. So one question is, do you pay these guys to write for you, or what's the arrangement?
Some people do get paid. Other people, I'll do barters with them in exchange for promotion. I'll run ads for them. Like one of my writers now, you know, he said, if you can promote me on this level, you know, where you could just run some ads for me, put my name in there, put a profile, link back to my website, it's a win-win. And then, yes, there are people that do get paid. We don't have a lot of money for it because we're just not that big. But a lot of people understand the message, and they know at the end of the day that this is going to get out there. It is going to get seen. And they can also use it to say, hey, look, I want to write for your magazine. I've written some stuff for a Guitar Connoisseur. So it helps them in that regard as well. But the end goal is to be able to just pay everybody, which is why this year I made the decision to turn the magazine into a monthly publication rather than a quarterly.
Right. So what about, so we talked about guitars, we talked about artists. Now what about like the gear behind the guitars? From the amps to the straps to the picks, like, you know, all of the accessories.
Yeah.
You write about some of those accessories, right, as well. And how does that come about?
You know, it's just like anything else. For example, I have about 5 companies that we're going to be talking to who make guitar picks. Guitar picks. I mean, they're $5 or they're $3. You know, some of them are $20.
I have 3 right here.
Oh, nice.
Wait. Yes. This is a good one. Cheap Trick. I don't know if you can see it.
Okay, Cheap Trick. Yeah, yep, okay. Cool.
What do I got? Oh, I got, you probably know this stuff more than I do.
Yeah, JHS. Yeah, they make
And then one more. I don't even know what the, oh, this is a funny one. The Romantics.
The Romantics. Dude.
I have 4, I don't know why. I got 4 guitar picks. They've probably been sitting here for 5 years.
Why did they talk in your sleep? Is that the song?
I
just saw that on YouTube. Like,
so anyway, how do you write a story about guitar picks?
Just like you do anything else. You know, why are you making guitar picks? The million picks out there. Why is yours different? How do you make them? What do they cost? Are you making a profit? Are you breaking even? You know, what's going on with them? Why should people want to buy your stuff? And the thing is this, it's guitar picks, but at the end of the day, every story is a good story. Every single one. Right. We all have great stories, you know. You just got to ask the right questions.
It's a music lifestyle story, right?
Absolutely.
Or something.
You know, but it's guitar picks. And you don't see a lot of press on guitar picks. You walk into the store, you buy a guitar, you go in for strap, you know, strings or whatever, and then you go, oh yeah, I could use some picks.
I want to do PR for your magazine because that story alone could be on TV. And then they would say, as written about a Guitar Connoisseur magazine, guitar picks, and this would be on Good Morning America or in USA Today.
Well, that's the thing. Companies are not covering this stuff.
Right. Well, so tell us a either funny or bad story about dealing with a PR person as an editor-in-chief. I know you were telling me the other day about like emails that you get that make no sense or something.
Yeah. Well, what I do think is funny is when you can tell that whoever's doing PR is like their significant other. And
Aw.
look, I know you care. And I know that like you're
My
providing.
boyfriend's the hottest guitar player. Yeah.
And some of it can come across like that. And
I've never done such a thing.
I'm like, I know exactly, because I'm typing back to them and I'm like, I know exactly who you are. Your number, and I know that you want this or you want that. But I think that if you're going to do that job, you really should try to do that job for other people. That would be my advice to them. If you're going to represent your significant other, then try to acquire some other clients so you get some real-time feedback as to how you're doing your job.
Right. Yeah, learn something about the industry at large, not just the guy who lives in your apartment with you.
Right.
Not even PR people usually, right?
No.
They're just like...
I can tell.
Right.
I know the rhythm of working with a PR person.
Right.
You respond, you're going to get an answer within 1 to 3 hours, next day the latest,
right.
Depending on how big, their client is. I also know by the way that they write that they have an English degree and they know how to write and they know how to communicate with the press. Right. And this is just kind of like, hey, yeah, okay, that sounds cool, whatever. And that's a more laid back approach. And there's nothing against that because at least the artist knows that they're not being taken and they have their best interest. And that's the best part of that.
You've also told me that you've gotten contacted by real PR people, but with products or people who you're like, why would you ever contact me about this, right?
Yes.
So we talk about this. April and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I want to hear the worst pitch you ever got and the best pitch you ever got.
I do get a lot of bad ones, but...
Explain why they're bad.
They're bad because they're not targeted. And I think what's happening with PR people, especially now, I think everybody's trying to get more clients and get as much stuff out there so that we're throwing press releases against the wall to see what sticks. And I think the reason that they're doing that is for their stats, so that they can go to another client and say, this is how many press releases I get out to publications every week. You should work with us. But the thing is, it's falling on deaf ears because as soon as I see like a pink bottle of perfume, I'm clicking delete. I don't want to read it.
So you get perfume pitches to your Guitar Connoisseur magazine.
Perfume, lingerie, t-shirts, like all kinds of crap. Again, there's a market for it. I'm just not it. So I think PR people really need to just pay attention to who they're sending stuff to, because if you're sending press releases out there to the wrong people, you're not going to look good. How are you measuring your success? You can't really measure it if nobody's responding. So you're working really hard and you're not working smart at all.
Right.
Spend a little more time and figure out who it is that you want to talk to, and you'll probably get something.
And so do you have in mind a great pitch out of the blue that you got?
Can I do a shout out then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amanda from ABC PR, her press releases are great. She represents artists that I normally do want to talk to. She's gotten me, people like Paul Gilbert, Richie Kotzen, these are important names in the guitar world. And my readers want to hear from them. So I have a great relationship with her. I forget what the first press release I got from her was, but it was right up my alley. It had great photography, well written, and it wasn't too long. That's the other thing. Some of these press releases are so long that I'm like, okay, no contact information at the bottom. I mean, it's crazy. She goes,
right,
okay.
Right. So that's another thing. When you say no to some people, what about PR people who don't take your no for an answer? What happens? Like, what do they say?
Well, they'll just come back and try to sell their story even more and tell me things like, when it goes live, we'll share it on our social media and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not going to work for me. Like, this story is just not going to jive,
Right.
Let me know when something else happens and I'll keep it under consideration. So,
right.
When you get a totally irrelevant perfume pitch, for example, or lingerie, do you put them to spam or report them, or do you just delete it?
No. So I'm a little bit of an email hoarder. Like
Okay.
I have emails from Laura from 2015. I don't know why they're
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, wasn't that the best pitch you ever got?
The thing with publicists is you got to be really careful because they might just be working at a really horrible agency, you know,
Yeah,
and they just
right.
need to like do what they're told and send stuff out.
Yeah,
But they might actually work for an agency that has people that I would be.
Right. In a year, you might want to know hear from them. Right.
So they might be like, oh, you know, Guitar Connoisseur, like they were mean to me or whatever the case is. You never know where these people are going to go, man. People become successful. People become successful. They work for other agencies, or even if they work at an agency they don't like, they might get assigned a new client because you guys are always looking for new clients, right? I mean, you don't just you don't stop.
Well, some agencies actually will say we're full up. At Trust Relations, we don't do that because we can just keep scaling. So there's no cap on what we're able to do.
Right.
Right.
And April hires freelancers. She's like the queen of like scaling. So there's no wall.
Yes.
To what we can achieve.
And the same thing goes for me regarding advertising. I won't say I don't have any more ad space. You know, my last issue was 200 pages. The digital version was 200 pages.
Nice.
So it was 102 pages of ads, digital ads.
So the thing that I think about Guitar Connoisseur is it's similar to like Vogue, where there's almost all ads, but there's such beautiful ads that people actually want to look at the ads as much as they want to read, the editorial.
I've heard that. So back to what you were saying. It's really important to maintain good relationships with public relations people, no matter what they're sending you, because I'm already on their radar. They're sending me stuff for a reason. I don't know how they found me, but they found me and they thought I would be a good person to contact. So it's really important for me to either not respond. I think that's what April was asking. I don't put them to spam.
You just delete it
But I will delete it. But I'm like, this person might come back to me. And if they do come back to me, I want to know what they've said.
Where we were before, right.
And how that all went, so yeah. So I just delete the perfume and lingerie stuff. I have a question for you guys. Yes. Being that you're PR people, and now with social media and so many bands promoting themselves through social media, do you guys feel like there's PR people is a dying breed and eventually people are just going to start doing it themselves? What I'm saying is that now people are taking a more DIY approach to, marketing themselves, self-promotion. So, I mean, what's your take on it?
April, I bet you have a good
answer. I'm not trying to hijack your show. But
it's a great question.
It's a good question. Frankly, there's a lot of art that goes into it and a lot of experience. That's not something that people can really do themselves. And to your point from before of the spamming, which I'm vehemently against as a former reporter myself, so that's a non-starter at Trust Relations. We don't do any blast pitching like that.
Right.
But I think what they run into is they think it works. So they'll get some media list from somebody secondhand, and it's probably 3 years old, and it's probably 10% accurate at this point, and they blast it out, and they don't understand what happened. Or they try to steal everybody's emails from Twitter and then they send out the same email to everybody, which also doesn't work because it still needs to be custom to that outlet, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is not everybody is a great writer. So they end up doing that thing where you're talking about where it's some long diatribe that doesn't get anywhere, or it's way too short and doesn't include all the relevant details.
Right.
And so the other thing that happens is a lot of people don't know the difference between media relations and influencer relations when they start. And they kind of treat it all like it's one big bucket. And that's another problem because there are a lot of nuances to both.
Okay.
So I haven't really seen anybody be able to do it. And the other thing is a lot of times two things happen. When you're the client and you think you can do it yourself, you're very myopic about what your story is. So we even have to recalibrate our clients' expectations because they think what they're doing is the greatest thing that ever happened and nobody in the universe has ever done it.
No competitors.
We're the first and there's no competitors in the entire world and it's super exciting. and then they send out the pitch, and it's going to look like something that was done 10 years ago, and nobody's going to write about it because nobody's there to check their math and say, hey, what's really different here? Have you done a SWOT analysis? Have you really looked at your positioning? How do you really fit in? And then sometimes, you know, people that are entrepreneurs tend to be a little bit on the grandiose side, which I can say because I'm one myself. And, you know, it's very easy to get lost in what you're saying is more interesting and a hotter take than anyone else when actually it's been said for the last 5 years. And so, but it's new to you and you think it's new to everyone else, but it's not. So I think there's an important element of having somebody that can kind of make sure you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid, which then recalibrates how you talk about yourself to the external world.
Well, and also think about promoting yourself. Like, you know, they talk about Donald Trump used to call reporters and pretend he was Donald Trump's publicist, but it was Donald Trump. Be like, hey, Kelcey, I'm awesome. Will you write about me? Like, it's just a weird, you know, to be the primary person, especially when you're calling like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Be like, hi, I'm really smart and I know everything about, you know, the technology industry, whatever. Like, will you interview me? It's just not a good look.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you got to know what you're doing. You have to really put the work in to successfully do it. I can tell who the good publicists are because I read the whole thing to the end. So I feel that press releases should really be a story. You're telling me a story, and how you tell that story. Like I said, we all got good stories, but you know, you don't ask the right questions, it's not going to be good. And if you don't tell it the right way, it's not going to be good.
Right. Why is this important? Why is this important now? What's new or different about this? Those kinds of things.
Right.
So how often do you get a pitch without a press release that's just a short and sweet, hey, I've got this new thing, are you interested?
I get the really simple pitches, I'd say about 2 to 4 times a month. I get really meaty ones. And then every day I get the junk. Every day.
The press releases.
The press releases.
So you're predominantly getting pitched press releases.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All the
time.
time.
Talking about it before.
I don't frown upon getting them. I mean, the more I get, the happier I am because it means my reach has grown.
How do you like to be pitched? And if people would want to pitch you normally at NAMM, and obviously I'm guessing that's not happening for a while, how would you prefer they introduce what they would introduce at NAMM to you?
I can tell the difference between somebody who's pitching because it's their job and someone who's pitching because they really believe in it.
Well, that's, you know, if somebody, even if it's just their job, if they get, and this is an interesting thing to think about, if they really get close to their clients and believe in them, then you are a pretty good advocate in at least connecting you with the clients, right? And then you understand that everybody's in it for the same reason instead of just like a smile and dial, like, let me get this over with. All right, so in the couple minutes we have left here, what would you like to plug or tell our audience about that will benefit you and your wonderful magazine?
Well, you can get the magazine on Amazon. Every single issue I've ever published is up. It's available worldwide. The website to go to is guitarconnoisseurmagazine.com. And what do I want to tell people? Read my stuff. Buy my books. Go to my website. Oh, here's what I want to plug. I am going to be launching a Kickstarter in the next week or two to raise some money so that I can hire more writers, spend more money on the website itself, photography, licensing, marketing budget, all of that stuff. I'm going to see how it goes and hopefully good things happen.
Email is the best way for people to reach you though, right?
Absolutely.
If they're trying to pitch you for either editorial or advertising.
Do they ever call you? Do they ever call you?
Yeah, do people ever call?
If I don't know who you are, I don't pick up the phone. There's just way too much spam going on.
Yeah.
I don't pick up. And you know, if you really do want to get me on the phone and you really want to talk to me, then you can call and leave a message, or you can do DMs on social media. I'm cool with that.
All right, Kelcey, thank you so much. You're the best.
Well, thank you so much for having me. You guys made me feel so important. Oh my God. Wow. I'm not used to doing this. I'm usually the guy asking questions and sending emails out to people and calling them. This was a lot of fun. I had a really great time, and I'll come back whenever you guys want.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you.
See you later.
All right,
Thanks. Bye, Kelcey.
Hi.
Okay, so we have our anonymous PR horror story.
Wow. I think I read last week, so you can read this
All right,
week's.
I'll do the honors. Wait, you should sing for us again. That was amazing.
Do, 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 do.
Okay.
Wah, 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 wah.
Really took it to the next level there. Okay, do not open until podcast. Here we go. I worked for a while as an intern at a competitive boutique agency. Designer shoes and expensive workout classes were all the rage in the office. I was an unpaid intern, but I worked a full 40 hours each week and was putting in all the effort I could to flip the opportunity into a full-time gig. I said yes to everything and tried to take feedback with grace, and I was learning a lot in the process. I tried to embody the all-in, quote-unquote, part of the family values that my managers espoused. I had no car, no experience, and a lot of declined entry-level applications, so the opportunity meant everything to me at the time. My savings were starting to wither. So if this internship didn't stick, it was looking like a ticket back to the world of waitressing. As the designated catch-all task intern, I was asked to help coordinate a wedding shower happy hour for a senior team member. Wait, I read that and now I got to read it again just because of what?
You can't believe you actually read that sentence?
No,
Yes.
so give me a second. Not the wedding shower happy hour for a senior team member. She was not particularly fond of me. But I knew that to impress her would mean a lot for my chances of getting hired there. My managers asked me to pick up the snacks and drinks for the party, and I'd be reimbursed later. It was tight on my wallet, but I wanted to prove that I could manage this project, so I did as requested. Oh God, can you imagine? It's probably like the last $50 they have in the bank account at the time. Later
Or
that
they,
day,
well, go ahead.
well, they're an unpaid intern
It's crazy. Go ahead.
living on savings, and they have to
I can't.
go.
Whoever would do that is evil. Go on.
Okay. Later that day, the senior team circulated a quote optional sign-up sheet to pitch in $25 for a gift. I had just agreed to put a large payment onto my card for the party refreshments, and I was really feeling the pinch. So I declined to contribute to the gift. After all, I was contributed by organizing the party, right? The day of the shower, I loaded up several bags and a backpack full of wine, cheese, plates, and napkins and lugged the shower onto the bus and on foot before work.
Oh my God.
The party was nice. And when gift opening time came, the bride-to-be read off the names. Oh no. Sorry, I just saw where this is going. The party was nice. And when gift opening time came, the bride-to-be read off the list of names for those who had contributed to her shower gift, and then looked right at me. Apparently, I was the only one in the office who hadn't. I was mortified, but also broke, and it took 2 weeks for that reimbursement to come in. What else could I do?
Dude, that's like a TV show. That's like that, the show Flack that we've been talking about a little bit. That would have happened in that TV show.
100%.
That is a nightmare. The fact that, I can't even say what I really think.
Come on, let's hear it.
Those who made this poor young girl go out and spend her own money on somebody's shower happy hour, that's insane. I'm furious. That should have never happened to her. But that, I feel so bad. So what else could she do? She couldn't do anything. She was totally painted into a corner.
Only thing that she could have maybe done, and I don't know that would have gone over well, is just to say, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm really, money is really tight for me since I'm an unpaid intern.
That shouldn't be her responsibility to have to look, I have no, then she's complaining. They set her up to fail every which way. See, this is why I'm doing this podcast with you, because I feel like stuff like this happens so much. why would you ask like your like least paid employee to take this on and have to pay for it? It's just, it's unacceptable. I could go on screaming about it for another 10 minutes. So there's nothing else she could do. And it didn't say here if she ever got hired, right? Afterwards.
No, we don't know.
But you know what? I hope she didn't and that dodged bullet.
That's a good point.
Horror show.
This person, we assume, is obviously doing well in PR, wouldn't be listening to the PR wind down and wouldn't be writing it. So hopefully that means that it all works out in the end.
Muscled through. I'm sure she did. Hopefully either not there or there and she got her revenge.
That's a truly horrific story. I'm sorry for whoever wrote that. That's terrible. Moving on to the next is PR News of the Week. Okay, let's hear it.
So Marilyn Manson, it was his ex-wife, Evan Rachel Wood. I guess they were never married, but they went out for years. And she accused him of abusing her, I think mostly emotionally and mentally, but some weird physical kind of things too. And at least 5 more women have come out to say he did similar things to me. And the thing that is the most upsetting about it is a lot of these women, Evan Rachel Wood in particular, were teenagers still when he went in and like, you know, brainwashed and manipulated the situation. And he was, I don't think any younger than 36 years old at the time of any of these women accused him of doing this. So he was 36 and then older, and they were like 18, 20, whatever, twice their age in some cases. And one musician did in fact accuse him of physical abuse. And none of them said anything specifically about it. I think some of them alluded to what had happened to them, but never said by whom, because they were afraid that it would not be worth it. The backlash, the power that he has in the industry, the fans would, you know, attack them, ruining their rock god's life. It's all of those things that go along with it. But Evan Rachel Wood finally came out, and then like, you know, a whole bunch of people came out behind her saying, yes, 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 same with me, same with me. The thing that was so obvious, it's one of those things that's like, of course he's going to be the guy who like, you know, cuts himself with razor blades and does crazy, you know, mental Jedi mind tricks. So since it's so obvious, you're like, there's no way that he's actually doing it.
A little on the nose, right?
And it's unfortunate because you just, to me, I just started thinking, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. Like 9 times out of 10, if somebody shows you or tells you who they are, that's usually who they are.
Right, so they say believe them.
Right, so how can you really put up this front for so many years?
So if you were Marilyn Manson's publicist and this came out.
Well, he comes out and he's like, he basically said there's a misunderstanding, or, you know, these women knew what they were getting into and they were going along with it, and now they're claiming that they didn't. That's what he came out with. I don't know if he might be somebody who just flies by the seat of his assless chaps. I don't know that he had a publicist like, you should come out and say that, you know, this was they knew what they were getting into, because I don't know if any publicist would advise somebody to say that right now.
Right. So your rating of the scandal on a scale of 1 to 10 is what?
Well, the scandal, that's a good question. I mean, the scandal or the handling of it from a PR?
The PR handling of the scandal. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Right. I haven't read anything like super recent about it. I think it sort of died down because I think they're now getting into it like from a legal standpoint. I mean, it was like a 4 or a 5, maybe worse. I mean, you can't, I'm sorry, dude, you can't come out with the like, they knew what they were getting into anymore. When she was 18.
Right, it's like she asked.
You were 36.
She asked for it.
Right, and 5 other women. It's the Harvey Weinstein thing. Like, okay, let's say a couple of these women are sort of making it up a little bit just to ride the coattails. Well, what about the other way? I mean, not all of them didn't make it up. So you got 6 women, and if 2 of them are kind of lying, well, you still got 4 women who are telling horrific tales. And when people say, well, it's Marilyn Manson, what did they think they were getting into? Well, it's like, I don't want to hear that, because...
Like slut shaming, except it's the
yes, slut shaming. I'm like, well, he's crazy. Don't you see the video for Tourniquet? He's got bugs, you know, crawling out of people's eyeballs. Of course he's a maniac. No, not necessarily. Not every person who does that kind of stuff is a maniac in real life. You hear stories about guys like that who are like the sweetest people to their wives or girlfriends.
What do you think this says about the media landscape today, the way it was covered?
Well, I mean, definitely the media are ready and willing to like eat all these kinds of stories up and, you know, put them anywhere and everywhere that they can. Now, maybe it's because of like, this is, you know, the far left, like, let's bring down all the men kind of thing. But the reason why the far left has done this is because how many Marilyn Mansons have been out there over generations and generations and gotten away with it and gotten away with it and gotten away with it. And now, no more.
So the way that it might impact PR is that if you have a client who's male
Mm-hmm.
and has a story like this come
Mm-hmm.
out, you have to immediately get on top of it, and you certainly can't say, well, they knew what they were getting into.
Right. So if you've got, I don't care, if anybody, any rock star, male or female, but male probably more in terms of like, you know, sexual misconduct, I think you need to have a crisis communications plan in place, assuming that a story like this is going to come out about anyone. I don't care how goody two-shoes they seem. And in fact, the more goody two-shoes they seem, the probably worse it would be for their career, right? This kind of goes along with the Marilyn Manson fable.
I mean, I know Base Nectar recently got taken down as well, right? For similar having a thing for young women. And all it took was one of his enemies, I think, as best as I can gather from what I understand, like getting that out there, and then they canceled him. He's done.
So in this case, I think what you need to do is not say that I didn't do that, especially when you probably did. I think you have to say, you know, Mr. Warner, aka Marilyn Manson, takes, you know, these allegations very seriously and has checked into the such and such, you know, sexual rehabilitation center to find out what the role he played in these allegations are. I think that's all you can do.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect.
He's a broken man, and that's truly what he needs to fix and what they should have come out with. Thank you. Good night.
So all of you people out there with a womanizing client, get your crisis preparedness plans in place.
Right, which means everybody who's got a male client, maybe even in business, like, think about this at least. And if you have a rock star or an athlete or whatever, like, put it in writing, because it's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then hooray, but... and then I don't know what women get in trouble for, but think about that too. Stealing, lying, beating their kids, I don't know. What are the bad things that women can get, you know, canceled for? And I think...
Being a Karen.
Right. I think unless truly the person is clearly not guilty, which of course everybody says they're not, but I think the way to go in this day and age is to say, like, she's looking into that to see what role she played or he played in this situation.
I like that advice.
I think some people disagree with me. Some people say, no, you gotta fight it. But that did not work for Louis C.K. or Harvey Weinstein, or, you know, it just didn't work. But it kind of worked for Russell Simmons.
Wait, why did it work for him, do you think?
Because there was going to be, I think there's going to be a documentary that came out about him and it got squashed. And like the allegations that came out about him that were about to like really send him over the, like, kind of got pulled back, or like there was a backroom settlement and then you never heard about it again. Like, some people have somehow been able to ride the wave through this a little bit better than others. So maybe if you don't have a great lawyer, you need to do what I said. Maybe if you know that your lawyer knows where all the bodies are buried in Hollywood, maybe then you can sort of get away with it. But it's getting harder and harder.
I like the idea of showing self-reflection, because that's sort of the most important piece. I mean, everybody knows that there's no such thing as, you know, it takes two to tango, right? As they say.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a psychological underpinning for why somebody does something, whether
Right.
they're the victim or the perpetrator, which is what Marilyn Manson was trying to say, I think. However, he should have taking the responsibility rather than deflecting it. So I think I like your advice of saying, you know, wherever you, I mean, if you have a way of burying it and it's not true, legitimately not true, then I say stand up for the client. But if it's most likely true, or there's an element of truth to it.
You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, people coming out. I mean,
120%.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And many thanks to our guest Kelcey for joining us today for a hard rockin' interview.
Remember, you can submit your own agency stories and questions, and please share our show with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps us reach new listeners like you.
And if you have an anonymous PR horror story of your own, you should send it our way at the contact email below the episode notes.
We can't wait to wind down with you again next week.
Bye.